It's strange. So I'm talking about the room temperatures. This room is boiling hot, but my kitchen, which is next room along, doesn't get the sunlight, and it's cold. Kind of strange, but I've got used to it after 30 years. So I'm just going to move the block right to the end of the mat and allow myself to sit down onto the bolster and spend a little bit of time just wriggling out. So whether it's a bolster or a blankie that's rolled up, it still needs a little bit of time for the characteristics of our bottom to be imprinted into whatever we're sitting on. So something a little softer this evening. Now I'm crossing at the shins, taking the feet deliberately wide, so I'm getting maximum rotation in the thigh to outside, so external rotation. And just allow myself to bring the pelvis into a neutral position, so it doesn't feel like it's leaning back or forward too far, which again, just as we can rock from side to side, we can actually tilt the pelvis backwards and forwards a little to find a comfortable place. And then allow ourselves to just lengthen the body up, relax the shoulders down, get a nice long back of the neck. I'll take a few more breaths here, enjoying the tranquility of sitting quietly. And we'll start to take this a little further. I'm going to bring this into alternate nostril breathing. So I'm going to use my right hand and bring my forefinger, so index finger, middle finger onto my forehead. And use the right thumb to just to block the right nostril off very gently, just closing the bottom, covering it rather than pressing into the side of the nostril. Allow myself to breathe in and out through the left for a little while. Connect into the right hemisphere of the mind. Also letting the elbows sink in towards the body so my shoulder is more relaxed, which does tilt my head forward a little bit. So if you're like me and you've got a long neck, you might need to do that as well. The important thing is that you feel comfortable and relaxed. If you're stressed in the position, then the breath won't really work. So we'll take the next breath in through the left. Close the left nostril, open the right to exhale. Slowly inhale through the right. Close the right at the top of the breath as we open the exhale to left. Draw the breath in left. Close. Open right exhale. Breathe in through the right. Close. Open and exhale left. Now the pressure that we put on the nostrils is very gentle. Just continuing with our breath, finding our own pace, which may be faster or slower. Take the last breath in through the right. Close. Exhale out through the left. Bring the hands back onto the thighs as I breathe in. Next exhale, let the eyes open. And we'll move ourselves down to the floor to come into Sphinx pose. So I'm just going to move my bolster a little bit further out to the side because we will be coming into half frog. So I need enough space to the side. I'll lay the belly gently down to the floor. Bring those elbows underneath the shoulders, and we'll bring the palms together into a kind of a prayer shape. So palm touching palm, fingers outstretched. I'm going to let the shoulders move freely towards the sky as that chest drops to the floor. To do my best to let the muscles in my lower back release on top of my glutes, all the way through the sides. It takes a little while for the feeling of relaxation to appear in those muscles. Probably a consequence of we spend a lot of time sitting in chairs, which might be comfortable, not necessarily good for our backs. Making an effort to release the shoulders, let the body sink. And then I'm going to come down a little bit further for that half frog. So I bring the hands underneath the chin, bring the feet onto the center line. I'm going to draw the left leg out first of all, 90 degrees to the body. The shin runs down the line of the mat, toes pointing out. And you can turn the head the same direction. I need to watch the clock, so that always makes it a bit of a challenge for me. I'm trying to let the groins open, hips sink down to the floor. They need to gently move around in the shoulder area as well. So body sinks closer to the ground as time moves by. And see if you can focus your mind on relaxing both shoulders and checking into how the hips and the pelvis feel. See if you can let go a little deeper. And take your consciousness back to your shoulders. Check how you feel. And then again into the hips. So we just keep circling around. If you're able to do both at the same time, that's lovely, but for most of us, that's a little bit demanding. There's very big muscles, very powerful, deep muscles in the hips. Focusing your attention purely on that range of muscles, I think, in my body has more of a success. If your body is different, that's great. Just letting you know how I do it. And slowly bring that foot back onto the mat. And we're going to move from the floor back into saddle pose. So I'm going to take the hands back and press away from the floor to lift up. Now, if you're able to do that purely by rolling to the side, that's fine. Bring the knees together. Feet out a little wider than the hips, sink back. And I'm going to move that block underneath my sitting bones, somewhere safe to land. You could be sitting on the end of the bolster or your rolled up blanket if that's a little bit more height needed in the pose. And we've got a little bit of internal rotation. We've obviously got a lot of straightening or straining through the knees as they open out a little bit. The calf muscles are getting a chance to relax. They start their adventure in this journey a little bit tense, and then hopefully as time progresses, they ease off. And we'll be coming back to this pose later on, but we'll be taking a reclined single leg version of it, where the bolster will start to come into play if you want to use it. There's a few postures down the road though, so just letting you know why we're doing this. Shoulders relax, long spine. Now the diaphragm to move, so breathing from low down in the belly, slowly into the chest. Okay, we'll lift up from here. Allow ourselves to just move forwards a little bit so we can bring the toes together on the center line. Keep the knees wide this time, and we'll settle back into child's pose. Now, you could take that with the hands out in front. You could take that with the hands underneath the foreheads. If you're able to get the head to touch the floor and it feels comfortable, you could take the hands towards your toes. So, 3 different options to allow you to sink into your easiest version of child's pose. You can even bring your rolled up blanket underneath your chest, which allows the spine to be longer. Generally, when you come into child's pose, it's a little bit curved. You can use props under the body to straighten that, lengthen it out. It feels very comfortable. We'll slowly lift back up. And we come back into Sphinx pose again. So just rising the feet back gently, taking them either side of the block. And this time, I'm going to allow the forearms to be parallel. You could, if you wish, bring your bolster underneath your chest to So have to lift a little higher and then bring the elbows over. It just changes the angle, but it can feel nice to drop the sort of bottom mid part of the ribs into a prop. Changes the feel. So you could just do regular Sphinx pose without any props, or you can play with. Start to move from here. Just to take the props out of the way, and we're coming back into half frog. So I'm moving the bolster towards the back of the mat. We'll need it. Bring the feet and legs back onto the center line, and this time just taking the right leg out to the side and relaxing down. Move slowly back up to sitting. So I'm going to roll my side till the knees in, just lifting up a slightly different way. And I'm going to use the block underneath my bottom to start with and come into half, sorry, not half butterfly, a full butterfly. Very big difference. So I bring the soles of the feet together, just wriggle out the bottom gently from side to side. So to move a little bit more onto the front edge of the sitting bones. Now the head to bow down and then start to let the rest of the body round gently through. Now some people like to take their arms on the inside of the legs. Some people like to actually take their hands out forwards of their body. And some people who are able to get low enough actually like to take their hands and place them underneath the legs, so towards the bottom part of the shin calf area, and get their elbows to the ground. So I would suggest that whatever feels comfortable is the way to go. If you do this pose and you know that you don't feel great in it, then try one of the other possibilities and see if that makes a difference. The idea is to really open out the spinal discs, the posterior side of the spine, so the spine side that's facing up to the sky. So there's also a fascia line which kind of explains why you can feel this sometimes right up into a crown, the back of the head, into the neck, all the way down to the tailbone and into the legs a little bit. It's all connected. Breathing's a little compromised. Try to let the ribs expand. I'll allow myself to slowly lift out of this pose as well. And then I'm going to come into this reclined single legged saddle pose. So I'm going to take the bolster behind because I'm going to come back and line my elbows onto there. Alternative to that is just to take the hands further back and then rest on the hands, or you can have the hands a little bit further forwards and just bend the elbows but support yourself. They're doing the same thing, but it just seems a little different. To come into this, I'm going to move on to all fours. First of all, and I'm going to move the block into a portrait position. I'm going to offset it a little bit towards my left side. Now I bring the left foot forwards and slowly sit back. I'm going to use the hands, and I want to be able to put the block underneath the left buttock. Allow the right buttock to be kind of free in the air, and have the heel, more importantly, just sitting out to the outside edge of the hip. I want the knee to be hopefully pointing forwards and on the ground. Now that may be enough, and that's fine if that's the case. That feels strong enough. But the alternative to that is to take the hands behind towards the bolster. And I'm going to slowly tilt the pelvis back and then let the body fold and follow, and bring my elbows onto the bolster so it's completely supported, and continue, excuse me, a little hiccup there, and then to try and let my lower back, my pelvis kind of sink and curl down towards the ground. Now the front thigh will feel very stretched. As I said, if you're not able to get down onto your bolster or your props, you can just take the hands back and lean maybe less far back. I know some people can lean all the way back, and if you're able to do that, then allow yourself to take the block out from underneath as well, because that would be a hindrance. And whichever position you get into, you want to make sure that the bent right knee stays on the ground. And if it lifts, you've gone too far, your hip flexor isn't able to cope. You need to move up just a little bit until the knee goes back down to the floor. Some people like to lengthen out the left leg. If that feels good, that's great. And keep it up as I have. Now I'm going to draw the belly in as I exhale. Press the shoulders back. Allow myself to bring the hands underneath and lift myself up. Come forwards onto all fours again. And then move the block over towards the right side. So this is now going to line up with the right buttock. Bring the right foot forwards. See it gently back. Allow the heel to just move out to the side a little bit, knee pointing forwards. And then again, we just sit there for a moment. See how that feels in the body. And then we can begin to draw ourselves back. As I said, it's a tilt of the pelvis down. Roll into those elbows. Check that your knee stays on the ground. And notice that my chin is drawn in towards my chest, so rather than letting the head hang back, I want to put any extra strain into the neck. Now I'm able to use this bolster. My forearms are on the bolster, elbows are bent, and my back is kind of resting against the bolster as well. So I've actually got a lot of support, which feels great. And again, I'll draw the belly in as I exhale, press the shoulders back. Start to use the hands to lift up. And again, lift myself up onto all fours. Just move the bolster out to the side and then sit back onto my bottom. And allow the legs to come forwards, and I'm going to take them wide. And I'm going to come into a second version of butterfly. This version with the legs out, sometimes called a straddle as well. So again, just enjoying wriggling through the buttock cheeks to get onto the front edge. Can be a little painful sometimes if you've got a hard floor with the heels. So you could always put a blanket or a cloth or towel underneath each heel if you find that's the problem. Maybe considering that as something to have as a prop for future. And then hands come forwards. Going to let the legs rotate to wherever they rotate to and allow the body to sink forwards. Now for me, let's kind of roll out to the sides. Slowly come forwards. Now you could bring the bolster directly underneath your body end on, so it would be nice and high and pressing into the chest. If you wanted a little bit more restorative kind of approach to it and hold it a bit longer. I'm quite happy to work with this amount of forward fold, legs outstretched, and then gradually I'm going to let the head drop, slowly letting it release. Getting very rounded in the upper back. And again, noticing that as I let the head drop, feel the intensity increase in the back of the legs and through the spine. And notice how it feels. Do you feel restricted in this, or are you able to breathe and move freely? Do you feel your body is stuck in this position on an edge, or is it moving and complying and yielding underneath you? All those feelings are valid. Neither is more right than anything else. It's just being aware of how it feels in your body. Some dialogue internally to these feelings allows us to pick up and retain that connection for the future more easily. Now, take a little breath from here. Start to press the hands back down into the ground and lift ourselves up. And use the hands underneath the back of the legs just to draw them in. And I'm going to move my bolster even further back. Move the block in that direction as well. I'm going to roll onto my side with my head towards the front end of the mat. If you're able to do poses on your side, on both sides, and still see your screen, if you head the other end, that's not a problem. I just need this to be so I can see the clock. Now I'm going to come down onto my side, and I'm going to have my hands out in front, palm on top of palm. I've got the knees bent with my heels more or less lining up with the line of my spine down the center of the mat. Let the head drop onto the floor if that feels more comfortable. I'm going to slowly extend the top leg out so the leg is straight and the foot is on the floor resting. I'm going to slowly draw the bottom thigh behind me until it feels like the knee has lined up with the line of the spine. And I'll walk the foot in towards my buttocks as best I can, just kind of using the toes. And then I'll slide this top hand along my forearm back towards my chest as I roll the shoulders down towards the floor. Give myself a little chance to adjust. See how easy that feels. And then I'm going to attempt to take the hand of the top arm and reach back and find my foot. And bring the heel a little closer towards my bottom. And allow the shoulders to roll down to the floor. Now, if the outstretched leg starts to lift off the ground, move the foot further away from the out to the side, and allow yourself to bring the foot back to the floor. So you've got one stable side, and the other side is kind of searching to find a connection with the ground. Unless obviously the foot and the shoulders are perfectly attached to the ground already. But for most of us, this is a big stretch. And you can look to the original side we started working to. You can look to the ceiling, or you can look over the shoulder to the opposite side. Wherever you look, allow the head to stay aligned to the spine, and the neck and shoulders feel soft and comfortable. I'm trying to let both legs relax. Take a little bit of mind and matter. Okay, we'll start to release the hand. Move the foot on the bottom leg down towards the end of the mat. And draw both knees in gently. Bring ourselves onto the side. As I said before, I'm going to change ends just to make it a little easier for myself. Same process. Palm on top of palm. Heels line up. Top leg lengthens out. Bottom leg walks back. Slide the hand across the chest and wriggle the shoulders around. Very soft to just hold there for a moment. We'll take the hand down, see if we can find the other foot. Sometimes we have to kind of manipulate our body a little bit to get a connection. And then we're ready to start the busy work of breathing. there. Now I'm going to bring the hands underneath my body a little bit to press up, move away from the floor. Going to sit up tall and bring the block in behind me. Swing the feet out to the side so I can come up onto all fours and tuck the toes underneath. I'm going to sit back onto that block with the heels, so I bring myself into a squat. So as I do, I'm just going to turn the knees out, heels coming a little bit more towards the center, find a safe spot. You can keep the fingertips on the floor if that feels more comfortable. If you're able to, take the arms and just place them on top of the knees, that could be a nice place as well, and it allows you to lift up the chest a little more, makes it easier to breathe. But it's wherever you feel most comfortable from a balance point of view and joints and muscles point of view. I'm going to be here for a minute. Now it may look like I'm sitting pretty still, but as I breathe, the body sort of rocks gently from side to side. It's a little bit like that phenomenon where we stand with our feet together in mountain pose, and after a minute or so, the body starts swaying around. So the same here. This seems a little more noticeable for some reason. Okay, I'm going to let the fingers come forwards onto the ground, lean in a little bit, and slowly lift my bottom towards the sky. Turn the heels out either side of the block, so the feet flat to the floor, and then move my block out to the side so it's out of the way. Soften the knees a little bit, let the ribs and the thighs meet. Bring the hands onto the hips, roll the shoulders back, and along the flat spine as I ease up on an exhale. I'm going to slowly take myself to the point where I'm facing the right side of the mat and the legs are out nice and wide. I wriggle them a little bit further just to make sure I get my money's worth. And I'm going to turn my toes gently towards the front end of the mat. So both feet have turned in a little bit. My hips are now diagonally off to the side rather than directly to the side. And I'm going to allow the front knee to bend. Take the arms into a warrior two position, so the hands are level with the shoulders. Relax the shoulders down. And try and very gently consider sending my tailbone down towards the floor. Your tailbone generally sort of tucks away a little bit from you behind. So we're going to try and draw that back under and send it down towards the ground. It will draw the abdominal muscles in a little more for you automatically as a consequence. So you kind of know when you've got that contraction working. The reality is that the pelvis moves very little. It does fire up and support the abdominal cavity, the groins, and the hips. Bring the hands back in towards the heart, straighten the front leg. We'll slowly spin the front foot. So now both feet are centering to the long side of the mat, turning in slightly. And then we'll move both feet to the opposite end. The hips again diagonal. Start to sink into that front knee over the ankle. Allow myself to turn the chest to the long side of the mat. Stretch out through the fingers and send the tailbone down. the hands back in. Straighten the bent knee. Turn the toes to the long side, and we'll move to the first side again. Sink into that knee. And I'm going to slowly extend the body out, bringing the forearm onto the front thigh and press the forearm down and against the inner thigh a little bit. Take the top arm up towards the sky as I breathe in. Turn the palm towards the front of the mat. Extend the arm out, following the line of my torso. Trying to turn the chest up towards the sky. Bit of weight into both feet. I'll slowly move back out of that. Straighten the front knee. Hands come into the heart, toes turn slowly. Long side of the mat. And as we exhale, we turn the feet the opposite way. Sink into that knee. Turn the chest. Long side, the hips stay diagonal, but the chest faces the side. Arms come out. Extend out slowly. Forearm comes down and pushes out. The top arm lifts up. You take a breath and then extend that palm towards the end of the mat. And then we slowly lift back up. Straighten the leg. Allow the toes to point to the long side of the mat again. Bring the hands onto the hips. Draw the belly in. Roll the shoulders back. Lunge forwards with a long flat back. Bring the hands down onto the floor, just onto the fingertips. And try and lengthen the spine out. Okay, I'll soften the knees a little bit. Walk the fingers around to the front of the mat and step myself back into down dog. Really using that as a transition, but just lifting the hips up. And on the exhale, just letting the knees gently come down to the floor. I bring the feet back out in front. And as I do, I use my trusty bolster again. So I'm going to start with this underneath the back of the thighs. And we're going to move ourselves into bridge pose, but it's a supported bridge pose. So I'm going to use the bolster underneath the pelvis. We'll slowly roll the spine down towards the floor and use my heels to bring the bolster close to my bottom. I have the feet a little wider than the hips, which I normally would have them a little more narrow than that, but I want a wider setting for this. I draw the belly down towards the spine as I press the back of my arms in to the ground. And then allow the fingers to find the bolster and bring it gently underneath my buttocks. So it's not really resting on the spine. And then once I've done that and allowed the bolster to take my weight, let the hands come back out to the side, palms facing up towards the sky. As you know, in bridge pose, normally the hands would be facing down, we'd be pressing through the arms and the shoulders. In this version, sported version, I'm letting the spine sink to the floor, resting solely on my bolster, which could be a rolled up blanket. Doesn't have to be super high. It's not really the height that is important. It's the ability to let the body sink to the ground and completely relax the shoulders and the back of the neck. So you could even do this with just a single block underneath your bottom and get the same benefit. I'm slowly going to press a little bit more weight into the feet, draw the belly in, lift the hips high enough so that I can push the bolster or whatever prop you're using away from underneath, and then slowly let my spine back down to the floor. I'm going to move the bolster with my feet just far enough in front that I can then bring my feet to the ground on the center line close to my bottom, knees high. And I'm going to bring the block underneath the back of the head and take my arms out nice and wide. And from here, I'll let the legs roll over towards the left, head to the right. So gentle spinal twist. And take a few breaths here. Bring the knees back up. Recenter, roll to the opposite side. How that feels in the body. Letting the legs find their own place, which for many of us will be hovering Yeah, somewhat. So bring the knees slowly back up on an exhale. Align the spine, and then I'm going to use the feet again to draw the bolster in, to bring myself into Shavasana. I want to need the bolster to be underneath the back of the knees and the heels still supported on the ground. If there's air underneath the heels, you need to move around a little bit. It's really important to look after the spine, the hip flexors, the nervous system. Feet in the air might feel comfortable to start with, but actually stresses the body. So we avoid that. Eyes are closed. Breathing gently. And we let ourselves sink into the mat. We'll slowly begin to stretch those fingers and toes into rotate the wrists and the ankles, drawing ourselves out of that long relaxation. Breathe a little deeper and enjoy a stretch of sorts that feels comfortable in your body. And then finally allow yourself to draw a leg at a time in towards your body so you can take a simple hug. Breathe in a little deeper, feeling the lungs expand right into the top of the rib cage. On the next exhale, we'll slowly roll on to our right side. Take a breath in the first. Exhale. Use the hands to lift up. Bring ourselves gently into a seated posture. Carefully bring the hands into the heart. Breathe in deep and long, slow. Close the eyes. Slowly exhale, draw the chin to the chest, belly to the spine, bow to the floor to seal our practice. And inhale, let the spine build and lift. Let the head follow, eyes open. Namaste. Thank you very much for joining me this evening. Hope you enjoyed your little bit of yin and yang, and I'll see you on the mat again soon.